I woke up feeling like a human panini pressed flat against the mattress under a mountain of solid radiating muscle. A heavy arm was slung across my chest, practically pinning me down. Hunter's face was buried in the crook of my neck, his rhythmic breathing tickling my collarbone. He mumbled something in his sleep, his grip tightening as if I were a giant breathing teddy bear. I sighed, staring at the chipped paint on the ceiling of our dorm room. I shoved his arm, earning a low, sleepy grunt. "Get off me, man. I cannot breathe," I muttered, landing a half-hearted kick on his shin. Hunter barely cracked an eye open. He just pulled me closer, burying his nose into my hair. "5 more minutes, babe. It is freezing out there." His voice was thick with sleep, rough, and completely unaware of what it did to me. A shiver that had nothing to do with the biting East Coast winter outside ran down my spine. I gritted my teeth and forcefully rolled out of bed, leaving him to groan and pull the blankets over his head. Same routine, same infuriatingly blurred lines. Hunter was a walking contradiction. He was the star captain of the university basketball team, a guy who oozed masculine energy, yet behind closed doors, he clung to me like his life depended on it. I used to think maybe, just maybe, it meant something, but reality had a funny way of slapping the hope right out of you. That slap came exactly 3 hours later, right in the middle of the campus quad. The snow was piled high along the walkways, and the icy wind cut through my jacket. I was trudging back from the cafeteria with 2 coffees, one black for me, one ridiculous caramel monstrosity for Hunter when I saw him. Hunter was standing near the library steps, his varsity jacket standing out against the white snow. Standing across from him was a guy from the arts department. I didn't know his name, but I knew the look in his eyes. It was the frantic, hopeful look of someone laying their heart on the line. I stopped behind a concrete pillar, the cold seeping through my sneakers. I didn't want to eavesdrop, but my feet refused to move. The art student shifted nervously, his voice carrying over the quiet, snow-muffled courtyard. "I just thought since you don't have a girlfriend and we get along so well, maybe we could go out sometime." Hunter shoved his hands into his pockets. His posture was rigid, his face completely closed off. When he spoke, his voice wasn't mean, but it was sharp, final. "Look, you're a cool guy, but no, I'm straight." The guy flinched, but he pushed on desperation, creeping into his tone. "But I see how you act with Jesse. You guys are always touching, you're always together. People talk, Hunter. I just thought..." "Stop right there." Hunter cut him off his tone, dropping a dangerous octave. "Leave Jesse out of this. Jesse's my bro. We're just friends. I'm straight and he's straight. He's my safe zone, all right? I don't have to worry about all this complicated crap with him. So back off. He's my safe zone." The words hit me harder than the freezing wind. I stood frozen behind the pillar, the paper coffee cups burning my freezing hands. My chest tightened until it physically ached. So that was it. That was all I amounted to. I wasn't special. I wasn't an exception to his rules. I was just a shield, a convenient, lazy roommate who wouldn't cross his precious, straight boundaries. I was the comfortable background noise that kept the real world and real relationships at bay. I looked down at the coffees in my hands, feeling utterly stupid. For months, I had let him sleep in my bed. I let him call me babe. I let my heart race every time his hand brushed mine secretly, hoping it meant he was waking up to what we could be. But I was just a prop in his life. I turned around and threw his caramel coffee straight into the nearest trash can. By the time I got back to our dorm, my mind was terrifyingly clear. People always called me lazy. They joked that my ambition peaked at finding the most comfortable position on the couch. But my laziness wasn't a personality trait. It was a survival tactic. If you don't try, you don't fail. If you don't care, you don't get hurt. I had poured my heart out once before in my life, and I got trampled for it. I wasn't about to let a straight guy with boundary issues do it to me again. I pulled my duffel bag from under the bed and started throwing my clothes into it. Jeans, hoodies, a handful of chargers. I didn't have much, which made running away incredibly efficient. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through a local housing group. There, it was a cheap, rundown studio apartment 2 miles off campus. Available immediately. Perfect. I was zipping up my bag when the dorm door swung open. Hunter walked in shaking snow out of his hair, his cheeks red from the cold. His face lit up when he saw me, but the smile died instantly when his eyes dropped to the duffel bag on the floor. "Whoa, where are you going?" he asked, stepping inside and closing the door. "Is there a family emergency or something?" "I'm moving out," I said, my voice flatter than I intended. I hoisted the bag onto my shoulder. Hunter blinked, staring at me like I had just spoken a foreign language. Wait, what? Moving out, Jesse, the semester is barely halfway done. Did I do something? Did someone mess with you? He reached out his hand instinctively, going for my arm, but I took a step back, dodging his touch. The air in the room suddenly felt incredibly heavy. No one messed with me, Hunter. I just need my own space. This place is too cramped. Cramped. He let out a breathless, confused laugh, running a hand through his messy hair. We've been fine for months. Come on, babe. If my gear's taking up too much room, I'll clean it up. Just put the bag down. The pet name made my stomach twist, but I forced my face to remain completely neutral. I looked him dead in the eyes, stripping away all the warmth I usually saved just for him. Don't call me that, I said quietly. I got a place off campus. I'll come back for the rest of my books later. Before he could process the rejection, I brushed past him, the fabric of my jacket slipping against his. I didn't look back as I walked down the hallway, leaving my safe zone title behind. It was time to go back to being lazy, unbothered, and entirely on my own. The first 48 hours in my new apartment were glorious. The place was practically a closet with a window. The wallpaper in the tiny kitchenette was peeling in thick, yellowed strips. The floorboards creaked if I so much as breathed too hard, and the radiator clanked like a dying engine every time it kicked on. But it was entirely unapologetically mine, and more importantly, it was quiet. There were no 6 in the morning alarms buzzing for basketball practice. There were no heavy, suffocating limbs trapping me under the covers. There was no lingering smell of citrus body wash to mess with my head. For the first time in months, I slept until noon, ate dry cereal straight out of the box, and fully embraced my natural state of being absolute horizontal laziness. To complete my new hermit lifestyle, I visited the local animal shelter and found my soulmate. His name was Nacho. Nacho was a massive 12-pound orange tabby missing half of his left ear. He possessed the exact same life philosophy as I did. If it required burning calories, it wasn't worth doing. The shelter worker warned me he was lethargic and slightly hostile, which to me just sounded like we were going to get along perfectly. Within an hour of bringing him home, Nacho had claimed the dead center of my cheap, lumpy mattress and refused to move. I happily curled up around him, pulling my fleece blanket over us both. This was it. This was the peace I had moved out to find. That peace shattered on day 3. I was dead asleep, Nacho purring like a broken chainsaw against my chest, when a loud, rapid pounding echoed through the thin front door. I groaned, burying my face in the pillow. Go away. I didn't order anything. The pounding didn't stop. It evolved into a rhythmic, aggressive thudding. Jesse opened the door before I freeze to death in this sketchy hallway. My blood ran cold. That voice. I scrambled out of bed, nearly launching Nacho onto the floor, and marched to the door. I threw it open, ready to yell, but the words died in my throat. Hunter stood there, shaking snow off his broad shoulders. He was wearing his heavy winter coat, carrying a massive pepperoni pizza box in one hand and a literal red metal toolbox in the other. He looked exactly the same, annoyingly handsome, exuding way too much energy for a Tuesday afternoon, but there was a tight, frantic edge to his jaw. How the hell did you find me? I demanded, blocking the doorway. You left your location sharing on from when we went hiking last month, Hunter said, pushing past me without a second thought. He dumped the pizza on my flimsy kitchen counter and dropped the toolbox onto the floor with a loud clang. And good thing I did. Jesse, this place is a dump. Your landlord is a slumlord. The hallway smells like wet dog and despair. It's cheap and it's quiet. I snapped, shutting the door, and you're not supposed to be here. I moved out for a reason. Hunter ignored me, unzipping his coat. Yeah, you needed space. Whatever. But your text said you were eating ramen for 3 days straight, so I brought food. And the admin office said, these old buildings have terrible plumbing, so I'm checking your sink. I didn't text you, I pointed out, crossing my arms. You tweeted about the ramen, he countered, smoothly opening the toolbox and pulling out a wrench. Same difference. I stared at him, bewildered. He was completely ignoring the giant neon boundary I had drawn between us. Before I could argue further, Hunter walked out of the kitchenette and froze. Nacho was sitting in the middle of the bed. The cat narrowed his green eyes, staring Hunter down with an expression of pure, unadulterated judgment. What is that? Hunter asked, pointing the wrench at my bed. That's Nacho, I said, a smug smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. He lives here, you don't. Hunter narrowed his eyes. He took a step toward the bed. Nacho didn't flinch. He just let out a low, warning hiss that sounded like a tire deflating. You got a cat. Hunter looked genuinely offended. You hate taking care of things. You won't even water a cactus. He doesn't need taking care of. We just exist in the same space, I said, walking over and scooping Nacho up. The cat immediately melted into a heavy puddle of orange fur against my chest. Now, are you going to leave, or do I have to call campus security on a trespasser? I'm fixing your sink, Hunter muttered, turning on his heel and marching back to the kitchen. And I'm leaving the pizza. Eat it. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought the terrible apartment and the hostile cat would be enough to drive him away. I was an idiot. The pizza and the toolbox were just the beginning. By the end of the week, Hunter had practically integrated himself into my new life. He didn't move in, but he might as well have. He showed up randomly between his classes. He brought groceries loudly, complaining that my fridge looked like a science experiment. He claimed the heating in my apartment was a health hazard and showed up with a heavy, expensive space heater, plugging it in right next to my bed. And then there was his war with Nacho. It was the most ridiculous thing I had ever witnessed. Hunter, a 6'2" star athlete, was actively competing with a 12-pound feline for my attention. If I was sitting on the tiny sofa reading, Nacho would jump onto my lap. 2 minutes later, Hunter would suddenly need to sit right next to me, his thigh pressing heavily against mine, subtly trying to edge the cat out of the way. Move, Garfield, Hunter would whisper when he thought I wasn't listening. That's my spot. Nacho would simply flick his tail and dig his claws slightly into my jeans, securing his position. The breaking point happened on a Sunday afternoon. The snow was falling heavily outside, and the apartment was suffocatingly warm thanks to Hunter's space heater. I had fallen asleep on the bed, lying on my back with Nacho dozing soundly right on my stomach. I woke up to the sound of hushed, angry whispering. Come on, just get down. There's a whole chair over there. I kept my eyes closed, listening. I felt a large, warm hand brush against my ribs as it tried to slip under the cat. Nacho let out a sharp, irritated meow, followed by the distinct sound of a paw swatting skin. He cried out in pain, hissing and pulling his hand back. Jesse, your rat just scratched me. I opened my eyes. Hunter was kneeling on the edge of the mattress, glaring daggers at the orange fur ball. He's not a rat, he's a cat, I mumbled, my voice thick with sleep. And why are you hovering over me while I sleep? It's creepy. Because I want to lay down and your beast is taking up half the bed, Hunter complained, rubbing the back of his hand. He looked down at me, his dark eyes softening instantly, the annoyance melting away into something that made my chest ache. You look tired, babe. Move over. Don't call me that, I said, my voice sharper this time. I sat up, clutching Nacho to my chest. The cat purred loudly, a victorious rumble. And I'm not moving over. This is my apartment, my bed. If you want to lay down, go back to the dorm. Hunter's jaw tightened. The easy domestic illusion he had been forcing for the past week cracked. Why are you being like this? He asked, his voice low and frustrated. I'm just trying to hang out with my best friend. Why are you acting like I'm the enemy? Because you're suffocating me. I finally snapped the words tearing out of my throat. I moved out to get away from this Hunter, from you acting like we're some married couple when we're not. You rejected that guy in the quad by calling me your safe zone. I am not your shield. I am a guy, and I don't want to play house with a straight dude who uses me to hide from real relationships. The room went dead silent. The only sound was the clanking of the old radiator. Hunter stared at me, his eyes wide, absorbing the impact of my words. He looked at the defensive way I was holding Nacho at the physical distance I had purposely put between us on the bed. I'm not using you, he said quietly, his voice cracking slightly. I don't like being in that huge dorm room without you. It's too quiet. Then buy a radio, I replied coldly, looking away because I couldn't bear the raw hurt in his eyes. Hunter didn't argue. He didn't try to shove the cat out of the way anymore. He slowly stood up from the bed, grabbing his coat from the single chair in the corner. He shrugged it on in silence, his movements stiff and mechanical. I'll leave the space heater, he muttered, walking toward the door. Keep it on. It gets cold at night. The door clicked shut behind him. I sat there in the heavy silence of the apartment, the space heater blowing warm air directly onto my face. Nacho headbutted my chin, demanding to be pet, but my hands felt numb. I had thought moving away would solve the problem. I thought physical distance would rebuild the walls I needed to keep my heart safe. But as I stared at the empty space where Hunter had just been standing, I realized a terrifying truth. I couldn't run away from him, because no matter how far I went, he was always going to follow, dragging all his confusing, messy, clinging warmth right back into my life. And God help me, a part of me never wanted him to stop. Hunter stayed away for exactly 48 hours. For 2 days, my rundown apartment was blissfully, suffocatingly quiet. I lay on my mattress staring at the water stains on the ceiling, listening to the radiator clank and the wind howl against the thin glass. I told myself I was relieved. I had successfully defended my boundaries. I had pushed the overly energetic, suffocatingly clingy star athlete out of my safe little bubble. I was also completely miserable. On the evening of the 3rd day, there was a tentative knock on my door. Not the aggressive police raid pounding from before, but a soft, hesitant tapping. I opened it to find Hunter standing in the hallway, snow dusting his beanie. He wasn't carrying a toolbox or a pizza this time. He just had his hands jammed deep into his coat pockets, looking unusually subdued. "I made a copy of your key," he said softly, holding out a shiny new brass key on his palm. "I'm giving it to you. I shouldn't have done that without asking." I stared at the key, then up at his face. The cocky, entitled edge he usually carried was completely gone. "If I let you in," I said, my voice guarded, "we need ground rules, an isolation contract." Hunter nodded immediately. "Whatever you want, Jess. Name it." I leaned against the door frame, crossing my arms. "Rule 1, you knock. No letting yourself in. Rule 2, no acting like we're a couple. No hovering, no territorial glaring, and absolutely no sleeping in my bed. You want to stay over. You sleep on the floor or that terrible armchair." "Got it. Got it," he agreed, stepping inside. "No bed, I promise." He lasted exactly 4 days. The breakdown of the isolation contract was a masterclass in slow, calculated infiltration. It started with the armchair. Hunter complained that the springs were digging into his spine and ruining his shooting posture for basketball, so he moved to the floor. Then he claimed the floorboards were giving him a sinus infection because of the drafts. "I'm just going to sit on the edge of the mattress," he reasoned, "on a freezing Tuesday night, wrapped in a blanket. Just my legs. I'm practically still on the floor." By Thursday, he was fully horizontal on top of the covers. And by the weekend, I woke up to find him completely under the blankets, dead asleep, with Nacho the cat happily curled up in the crook of his knees. My traitor of a feline had officially switched sides because Hunter radiated the body heat of a massive athletic furnace. I stared at the ceiling, feeling Hunter's heavy arm draped casually over my waist, and realized I didn't have the energy or the willpower to kick him out. The real shift in our dynamic, however, didn't happen because of a broken rule. It happened on a miserable freezing night when the East Coast weather decided to unleash a torrential downpour of icy sleet. The power in my cheap building had flickered and died around 8 o'clock. Hunter had immediately gone into survival mode, lighting a handful of cheap candles I kept in a drawer and dragging my extra boxes from the closet to use as a makeshift table for a card game. He was unpacking a small cardboard box to flatten it when a framed piece of heavy paper slid out and hit the floor with a clatter. Hunter picked it up, squinting in the dim candlelight. I froze when I saw what it was. State Finalist Collegiate Marketing and Leadership Initiative. Hunter read aloud, his voice echoing loudly in the quiet room. He looked up at me, his dark eyes wide with genuine shock. "Jesse, this is from 2 years ago. You were the project lead for a state-level initiative." I swallowed hard, reaching out to snatch the frame from his hands. "It's nothing. Just some stupid extra credit thing from sophomore year. Leave it alone." Hunter didn't let go. He held the frame, his gaze shifting from the embossed gold seal to my defensive posture. "You don't even go to club fairs anymore. You complain when a professor assigns a 2-page paper. Why did you stop doing this? You clearly won an award for it." "I didn't win," I snapped, pulling the frame harder. Hunter finally released it, and I tossed it face down onto the floor. "I got honorable mention. The group won. Now drop it, Hunter." "No," he said, gently shifting closer on the floor. In the flickering orange light, his face was stripped of all its usual playful arrogance. "You moved out to get away from me using you. But you've been hiding from everything else way before I came along. Why?" I hugged my knees to my chest, staring at a melting candle. The silence stretched heavy and thick with the sound of freezing rain lashing against the window pane. I hated talking about it. I hated acknowledging that I used to care. "Because trying is a trap," I said quietly, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Sophomore year, I poured 6 months of my life into that project. I stayed up in the library until 3 in the morning, coding the models, writing the pitches, building the entire foundation. My friends, the guys I trusted in my group, told me I was too socially awkward to do the final presentation. They took my slides, put their names in bold on the title page, and took the stage. Hunter's jaw clenched. They stole your credit. They stole the whole thing, I corrected with a bitter laugh. When the judges praised the innovative data model, my friend took the microphone and said it was a team effort, but he came up with the core concept. When I confronted them later, they called me dramatic. They said I was just the background guy, the numbers guy, and I should be grateful they let me tag along. The department chair believed them. I looked up at Hunter, my chest tight with a ghost of the humiliation I had felt 2 years ago. So I stopped trying. I confessed, my voice barely a whisper. If you don't build a tower, no one can push you off it. If you're just the lazy, unmotivated guy in the background, nobody expects anything from you, and nobody can take anything away from you. Being a background character is a bulletproof vest. That's why your safe zone comment hurt Hunter, because it just proved that even to you, I'm just a prop. Hunter didn't say a word. He didn't offer a cliche apology or tell me I was wrong. Instead, he reached across the space between us. His large, warm hand cupped the side of my face. His thumb gently brushed against my cheekbone. It wasn't the careless, possessive touch of a guy claiming his territory. It was deliberate grounding and devastatingly tender. They were idiots, Hunter whispered fiercely, his eyes burning into mine in the candlelight. They were blind, arrogant idiots. You're not a prop, Jesse. You're the smartest, funniest, most stubborn person I know. And I was an idiot for making you feel like you were just a convenience. My breath hitched. The walls I had spent 2 years building the layers of apathy, laziness, and cynicism trembled under the weight of his gaze. I wanted to pull away. I wanted to make a sarcastic joke and retreat back into my comfortable numbness. But as his thumb stroked my cheek, I didn't move. Later that night, long after the candles had burned out, we lay in bed. The contract was officially shattered. Hunter's arm was wrapped securely around my waist, his chest pressed firmly against my back. I lay awake in the dark, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against my spine. I looked at the dark silhouette of the window, the freezing rain still falling outside. My heart was pounding, skipping chaotic beats in my chest. I was terrified, because I realized with absolute certainty that I wasn't just hiding from the world anymore. I was falling in love with my straight best friend, and my bulletproof vest was officially utterly useless. Realizing you are in love with your straight best friend is a lot like realizing you've just stepped off a cliff in the dark. There is a brief, weightless moment of clarity, followed immediately by the terrifying anticipation of hitting the ground. After that rainy night in my apartment, my defense mechanisms kicked into overdrive. I couldn't let Hunter know. If he found out that his safe zone was actually harboring massive chest-crushing feelings for him, it would ruin everything. So I did what I do best. I retreated, and I looked for the easiest, most low-effort distraction available. Enter Chase. Chase was a sophomore arts major who rode a matte black motorcycle, wore way too many silver rings, and possessed the kind of effortless confidence that usually annoyed me. But Chase had one massive redeeming quality. He fully supported my desire to do absolutely nothing. Unlike Hunter, who was constantly trying to drag me out of bed to experience life, Chase was perfectly content to let me be lazy. When we ran into each other outside the library on a freezing Thursday afternoon, he didn't ask me to go on a hike. He just looked at my exhausted face, smirked, and said, "You look like you'd rather be dead than walking right now. Hop on the bike. I'll buy you fries." I didn't even hesitate. I put on the spare helmet and let him drive me to a neon-lit 24-hour diner on the edge of town. It was nice. It was easy. We spent the next 2 hours in a worn leather booth eating greasy food while Chase did 90% of the talking. He was funny, he was openly flirting with me, and most importantly, he wasn't Hunter. Around 10 o'clock, Chase dragged me to the back of the diner to play pool. I was leaning heavily against my cue stick, watching him line up a shot when the bell above the diner door jingled violently. I didn't need to look up. I felt the shift in the atmosphere before I even saw him. Hunter stalked into the diner like a dark, freezing storm cloud. He was wearing his team jacket, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might shatter. He scanned the room, his dark eyes locking onto me with the precision of a heat-seeking missile. My stomach dropped into my shoes. I muttered a curse under my breath. Chase looked up from the pool table, following my gaze. "Friend of yours. He looks like he wants to murder the jukebox." Before I could answer, Hunter was already crossing the faded linoleum floor. He didn't say hello. He didn't acknowledge Chase at all. He marched right up to me and grabbed my upper arm, his grip tight and possessive. "You haven't answered your phone in 4 hours," Hunter said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "I went to your apartment. I went to the dorm. Where the hell have you been?" I yanked my arm out of his grasp, my heart hammering against my ribs. "I've been here. My phone is on silent. And since when do I have to report my coordinates to you?" Hunter's eyes narrowed, flashing with a raw, ugly jealousy. He finally shifted his gaze to Chase, looking the sophomore up and down with absolute disgust. "Who is this?" Chase leaned against the pool table, twirling the chalk in his fingers. He wasn't intimidated. If anything, he looked amused. "I'm Chase, and you're interrupting our game, man." "I don't care what you are," Hunter snapped, taking a threatening step toward Chase. His height and athletic build suddenly made the small space feel incredibly claustrophobic. "The game is over. Jesse is leaving with me." "Excuse me." I shoved myself between them, pressing my hands against Hunter's solid chest to push him back. "I'm not going anywhere with you. You can't just storm in here and bark orders at me." "He's practically a stranger," Jesse Hunter shot back, his voice rising, drawing the attention of the few late-night truckers in the diner. "You don't even know him. What are you doing riding on the back of some guy's motorcycle in the middle of the night?" "I'm on a date," I yelled back, the lie tearing out of my throat before I could stop it. The word hung in the air, freezing the oxygen in the room. Chase raised an eyebrow, a slow, appreciative smile spreading across his face. Hunter, however, looked like I had just punched him in the throat. All the aggressive color drained from his face, leaving him pale under the harsh, fluorescent lights. His eyes darted between me and Chase, his chest heaving with uneven breaths. "A date," Hunter repeated, his voice barely a whisper. The anger was suddenly gone, replaced by something wild and desperate. He reached for my wrist again, his fingers wrapping around my skin like shackles. "Jesse, no. Stop messing around. Let's go home." "Don't touch him," Chase warned, his playful demeanor vanishing. He took a step forward, grabbing the pool cue a little tighter. "He said he's not going with you. Back off, bro." "I am not your bro," Hunter roared, shoving Chase backward by the shoulder. A stool crashed to the floor. The diner cook shouted something from the grill. Panic surged through my veins. "Stop it." I grabbed the front of Hunter's jacket, using all my weight to drag him away from Chase. "Outside. Right now." I didn't wait for him to argue. I pulled him out of the back door of the diner, shoving him into the freezing, snow-covered parking lot. The cold air hit my face like a slap, but my blood was boiling. The flickering neon sign of the diner cast harsh red shadows across Hunter's furious face. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I screamed, the sound echoing in the empty lot. "You shoved him over what a game of pool." "Over you," Hunter yelled back, running his hands frantically through his hair. He paced a few steps, looking like a caged animal. "You're hanging out with some player who clearly just wants to get in your pants, Jesse. I'm trying to protect you." "I don't need your protection." I took a step toward him, pointing an accusing finger at his chest. "I am perfectly capable of making my own choices. If Chase wants to hook up, maybe I want to hook up too. Why does it matter to you?" "Because it does," Hunter shouted, stepping into my space until we were inches apart. The heat radiating off his body was overwhelming in the freezing air. His eyes were dark, frantic, searching my face for something I couldn't give him. "Because I hate it. I hate seeing him look at you. I hate that you're wearing his stupid helmet, and I hate that you're shutting me out." My chest ached so badly I thought my ribs might crack. I loved him, and it was tearing me apart because he was standing right in front of me, claiming me, holding on to me, without actually wanting me the way I needed. "You don't get to hate it," I screamed, my voice cracking, the tears burning the corners of my eyes. I pushed him hard, but he barely moved. "You don't get to act like a jealous, possessive boyfriend, Hunter. You don't get to claim me." "Jesse." "No," I cut him off, my breathing ragged. "You made your boundaries perfectly clear in the quad. Remember, you're straight. I am just your bro. I am your safe zone. So stop acting like you own me when you don't even want me." Silence crashed down on the parking lot. The words hit Hunter like a physical blow. He froze completely. The frantic, possessive anger drained out of his eyes, leaving behind a wide, shell-shocked realization. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. He stared at me, his fists slowly unclenching at his sides as the reality of my words tore through his excuses. He couldn't hide behind the best friend label anymore. Not after this. Before he could find his voice, the heavy metal door of the diner squeaked open. Chase stepped out into the cold, tossing his leather jacket over his shoulder. He He looked at Hunter's frozen expression, then at my shaking hands. "You good, Jesse?" Chase asked quietly, tossing me the spare helmet. I caught it, my fingers numb against the cold plastic. I looked at Hunter one last time. He looked utterly devastated, stranded in the middle of the snow, the realization of his own feelings finally catching up to him. "Yeah," I whispered, pulling the helmet over my head to hide my face. "I'm good. Let's go." I climbed onto the back of Chase's motorcycle. The engine roared to life, shattering the silence of the night. As we pulled out of the parking lot, I glanced in the side mirror. Hunter was still standing there under the flickering red neon sign, alone in the snow, watching me ride away. For the first 48 hours after the diner incident, I was convinced I had won. Hunter didn't call. He didn't text. He didn't show up at my apartment with unnecessary appliances or a terrible attitude. I had successfully drawn a line in the snow, and for a guy who claimed to be straight, a public screaming match was apparently the ultimate deterrent. I should have been thrilled. I had my quiet, dilapidated apartment back. I had my lazy weekends. Chase texted me a few times, sending blurry photos of his motorcycle and asking when we were going out again. I responded with non-committal emojis, suddenly drained of the energy it took to pretend I was interested. The problem was the silence. When you spend months adjusting to the presence of a human hurricane, the sudden absence of wind doesn't feel like peace. It feels like a vacuum. The apartment was too quiet. The radiator's clanking was just annoying, not a comforting backdrop to an argument. Even Nacho, my supposedly anti-social cat, spent 2 entire days sitting by the front door, occasionally letting out a pathetic, questioning meow aimed at the wood paneling. "He's not coming back, buddy," I told the cat on Wednesday evening, dropping a handful of dry food into his bowl. Nacho ignored the food, gave me a look of profound betrayal, and marched under the bed. I dragged my hands down my face, exhausted. I was sleeping 10 hours a night and waking up more tired than when I went to bed. I missed the smell of his citrus body wash. I missed the ridiculous way he took up too much space on my terrible mattress. I hated myself for it, but the bulletproof vest I had worn for 2 years was lying in pieces on the floor, and I was just standing in the rubble, freezing to death. By Friday, the silence finally broke. It wasn't a frantic pounding on the door. It was a single heavy knock. I froze on the couch. Nacho darted out from under the bed, his tail twitching in anticipation. I took a slow breath, bracing myself for whatever new wave of denial or anger Hunter was bringing to my doorstep. I walked over, unlocked the deadbolt, and pulled the door open. Hunter looked terrible. He was wearing gray sweatpants and a rumpled hoodie, his hair sticking up in every direction as if he had spent the last 5 days running his hands through it. There were dark circles under his eyes, and he looked like he had dropped 5 pounds he couldn't afford to lose. He didn't step inside. He just stood in the hallway, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, looking at me like I was the only solid thing in the universe. "You look like crap," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. My hands gripped the edge of the door to keep from reaching out to him. "I haven't slept," he replied, his voice rough and uneven. "I spent the last 4 days in the campus gym, just shooting hoops until they kicked me out, and then sleeping on the locker room benches." I frowned, my chest tightening. "Why didn't you just go back to the dorm?" "Because you aren't there," he said simply. There was no hesitation, no covering it up with a joke or a layer of bravado. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my defensive walls up. "Hunter, if you're here to apologize for yelling at Chase, don't. It's fine. We can just go back to how it was before. Best friends. Brurs." The words tasted like poison, but I forced them out. Hunter flinched as if I had physically struck him. He took a half step forward, his dark eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made the breath catch in my throat. "No," he said firmly. "We are never going back to that. I don't want to be your bro, Jesse. You said you were straight," I reminded him, my voice trembling slightly. "You announced it to the entire campus. You told me." I lied. He interrupted, the words tumbling out of him like a confession. He pulled his hands out of his pockets, running them through his messy hair in frustration. Or maybe I was just stupid or blind. I don't know, Jesse. All I know is that when I saw you on the back of that guy's bike, it felt like someone was tearing my chest open. I couldn't breathe. I spent the last 4 days trying to convince myself that I was just being overly protective, but it's a lie. He stepped closer, bridging the gap until he was standing right in the doorway. The scent of citrus and sweat washed over me, painfully familiar. "I'm not straight," Hunter said, his voice dropping to a raw, desperate murmur. "At least not with you. If it's you, I don't care what the hell I am. I just know I can't stand the thought of you belonging to someone else." The hallway spun. My heart hammered against my ribs so violently I thought it might shatter them. 2 weeks ago, this was exactly what I wanted to hear. It was the fantasy I had replayed in my head every time he threw an arm around me in the dark. But as I looked at his exhausted face, a cold wave of panic washed over me. "No," I said, taking a step back. Hunter froze, his expression crumbling. "Jesse." "No, Hunter, listen to yourself," I said, my voice shaking. I crossed my arms over my chest, physically shielding myself. "You're reacting to Chase. You're competitive. You've spent the last 3 years of your life winning at everything. And the second someone else tries to take something you think belongs to you, you panic. You don't want me. You just don't want anyone else to have me." "That's not true," he protested, his jaw clenching. He reached out to grab my hand, but I pulled away. The rejection flashed in his eyes, stark and agonizing. "Isn't it?" I challenged, my throat burning. "You've treated me like a safety blanket for months. You like the comfort. You like the fact that I don't ask anything of you. But being in a relationship with a guy, actually being with me, that takes work. Hunter, that takes risk. And you're terrified of it." He stood in silence, his chest heaving. He wanted to argue, but the truth in my words hung heavy between us. He was terrified. I could see it in the tension of his shoulders and the slight tremor in his hands. "So what am I supposed to do?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Just walk away, because I can't do that, Jesse. I physically can't." I looked down at the peeling linoleum floor, trying to find the courage to do what needed to be done. If we jumped into this now built on jealousy and panic, it would crash and burn. And if Hunter broke my heart, I wouldn't survive it. I would retreat to my bed and never leave it again. "We do a test," I finally said, looking up to meet his desperate gaze. "A test." 30 days, I said, my voice steadying. "For 1 month, you keep your distance. No sleeping in my bed, no showing up with pizza unannounced, no territorial glaring if I talk to Chase or anyone else. You figure out your own life without using me as a crutch." Hunter stared at me in horror. "A month, Jesse? Are you insane? The semester is halfway over. If you actually like me, if this isn't just you being a possessive, competitive jerk, then your feelings will still be there in 30 days. I explained, forcing a cold rationality I didn't feel. "If you realize you just missed having a lapdog, then you can go back to being the straight star athlete, and we can go our separate ways." "I don't want to go our separate ways," he nearly shouted. 30 days. "Hunter," I repeated, my tone final. I stepped back, preparing to close the door. "Show me you want me, not just that you want to win." For a long moment, Hunter just stood there. The anger, the panic, the desperation, it all cycled through his dark eyes in rapid succession. I expected him to throw a tantrum. I expected him to storm off, finally exhausted by my difficult, lazy, barricaded personality. Instead, he set his jaw. The frantic energy vanished, replaced by a terrifying, focused intensity. "Fine," Hunter said, his voice dropping to a deadly serious register. 30 days. He took a step backward into the hallway. "But you better be ready, Jesse," he warned, his eyes burning with a promise that made my pulse skyrocket. "Because when this month is over, I'm not knocking anymore. I'm kicking the damn door down." He turned and walked down the hallway, leaving me alone in the doorway. I slowly closed the door, sliding down the wood until I hit the floor. Nacho padded over, curling into my lap as I buried my face in my hands. The clock had officially started, and I had absolutely no idea how I was going to survive the next 30 days. Day 27. I had survived 27 days of the most agonizing, deafening silence of my entire life. True to his word, Hunter had vanished. He didn't text, he didn't call, and he didn't conveniently bump into me on campus. For almost a month, I dragged myself to classes, ate terrible microwave dinners, and stared at my phone until my eyes burned. Chase had texted a few times during the first week, but I eventually replied and told him I wasn't in a place to date anyone. He took it well, riding off on his loud motorcycle and taking the very last of my distractions with him. I thought the distance would make me feel safer. I thought my bulletproof vest would stitch itself back together. Instead, I just felt hollowed out. On the evening of day 27, the universe decided I hadn't suffered enough and delivered a massive, once-in-a-decade snowstorm to the East Coast. By 8 o'clock, the snow was piled 2 feet high against my front door, and the wind was screaming against the thin glass of my single-pane windows. My dilapidated building groaned under the weather. The radiator clanked uselessly, fighting a losing battle against the freezing drafts. But the cold in the room was nothing compared to the violent shivering taking over my own body. It hit me fast, One minute, I was reading a textbook on the couch, and the next, my vision blurred. My joints ached with a deep, grinding pain, and a terrifyingly high fever spiked. My teeth chattered so hard my jaw ached. I dragged myself to the bed, pulling every blanket, coat, and towel I owned over my body, but it felt like I was lying on a slab of solid ice. Nacho paced around my head, letting out distressed, low meows, nudging my cheek with a cold nose. "I'm fine, buddy," I croaked, but my throat felt like it was lined with shattered glass. By midnight, I was completely delirious. The apartment was spinning in slow, nauseating circles. My chest felt tight every breath, a shallow gasp. I needed water. I needed to take medicine. But my limbs were practically paralyzed, weighed down by the crushing fatigue of the fever. I blindly fumbled in the dark for my phone on the nightstand, knocking over a half-empty glass of water in the process. My shaking fingers gripped the cold metal. I couldn't focus on the screen. The brightness stabbed at my eyes. I just wanted to check the time, or maybe find the campus emergency clinic number, but my thumb slipped on the glass screen, accidentally hitting the favorites widget. The phone buzzed, initiating a call. I squinted, my heart stopping when the blurry photo of Hunter grinning on a basketball court filled the screen. No. Hang up. Hang up, I thought frantically. My thumb scrambled to hit the red button, but the phone slipped from my sweaty, trembling grip and tumbled into the folds of my blankets. Before I could dig it out, the ringing stopped. The line connected. Jesse. His voice echoed through the speaker, muffled by the heavy blankets, but it was enough to make a fresh wave of tears burn my eyes. It had been 27 days. Hearing his deep, frantic tone was like a sudden rush of oxygen to my starved lungs. "Jesse, it's 2 a.m. Are you okay?" I tried to speak, to tell him it was an accident, to tell him not to break the rules. But all that came out of my throat was a weak, pathetic whimper, followed by a harsh, rattling cough. "Jesse. Hey, talk to me. Are you crying? You sound like you can't breathe." Panic, raw and unfiltered, spiked in his voice. "I'm coming. I'm leaving right now. Don't hang up." Snowing, I managed to slur out my brain completely foggy. "Roads are bad. I don't care if the sky is falling. Keep the line open. I'm coming." I didn't have the strength to argue. I just closed my eyes, letting the darkness pull me under the faint sound of Hunter rushing around in his dorm, acting as my only anchor. I didn't know how much time passed. It could have been 20 minutes or 2 hours. I was jolted semi-awake by a deafening crash. My front door didn't just open, it was shoved inward with such violent force that the deadbolt groaned and the wood cracked against the wall. Snow and freezing wind blasted into the hallway. Jesse. Heavy, frantic footsteps thundered across the peeling linoleum. Then suddenly the freezing air was blocked out. Large, warm hands were on my face, pushing the damp hair off my forehead. I peeled my eyes open. Hunter was kneeling by the bed. Under normal circumstances, Hunter was the picture of effortless, athletic perfection. Tonight, he looked like he had dressed while falling down a flight of stairs. He was wearing his heavy winter coat, but it was completely inside out, the bright orange lining glaring in the dark. His flannel shirt was buttoned wrong, exposing his collarbone, and when I blearily glanced down, I realized he was wearing one basketball sneaker and one heavy winter boot. He had driven through a blinding, catastrophic blizzard in the middle of the night, half-dressed just because he heard me cough. "Jesse, you're burning up." Hunter gasped, his hands moving frantically over my cheeks, my neck feeling the unnatural heat radiating from my skin. "You're at 103 at least." Okay. I've got you." He didn't hesitate. He stripped off his ridiculous snow-covered coat and threw it aside. He ran to the bathroom, running the water. A minute later, he was back, gently pressing a cool, damp cloth against my burning forehead. He dragged his heavy space heater closer to the bed, turning it up to the maximum setting. For the rest of the night, he didn't leave my side. Every time I woke up shivering, he was there, pulling the blankets tighter around me. When I groaned in pain, he lifted my head, bringing a cup of cold water to my cracked lips, whispering soft, grounding praises as I drank. Eventually, the cold chills hit me so hard my teeth began to chatter violently again. Hunter didn't say a word. He just climbed into the narrow, lumpy mattress, fully clothed, and pulled me flush against his chest. He wrapped his arms around me, burying his face in my hair, using his own body heat to fight the violent shivering taking over my body. "I've got you, babe," he whispered into the dark, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm right here. Just sleep." For the first time in 27 days, I felt entirely perfectly safe. When I finally woke up, the blinding white light of the morning sun was reflecting off the snow outside my window. The heavy, crushing weight of the fever had broken. My throat was still sore and my limbs felt like lead, but my mind was clear. The apartment was incredibly warm. I shifted slightly and my back immediately brushed against a solid wall of muscle. I turned my head. Hunter was sitting up, leaning his back against the headboard. His eyes were bloodshot, completely exhausted, but they were wide awake, locked onto my face. His hand was gripping mine so tightly, his knuckles were white, as if he was terrified I would slip away if he let go. Fever broke, he murmured, his voice incredibly hoarse. I swallowed, staring at him. He looked like an absolute wreck. The invincible captain of the basketball team reduced to mismatched shoes and dark circles, all for me. "It hasn't been 30 days, I whispered, my voice raspy. Hunter let out a breathless, exhausted laugh. He didn't pull away. He just brought my hand up to his lips, pressing a desperate, lingering kiss to my knuckles. "I lose," Hunter said, his voice cracking, entirely stripped of all his pride and bravado. "I don't care about the test. I don't care about my ego. I lose, Jesse. I'll always lose if it means having to stay away from you." He leaned down, his forehead resting gently against mine. I could feel his breath warm and shaking against my skin. "I love you." He whispered the words, slipping out with such desperate honesty that it made my heart stop. "I'm terrified of messing this up, but I love you. So don't make me leave, please." I stared into his dark eyes, seeing nothing but absolute vulnerability. He wasn't competing with Chase. He wasn't protecting his territory. He was just Hunter, terrified and completely mine. I slowly turned my head, my eyes catching a stack of mail on the kitchenette counter that I hadn't opened yet. Sticking out from the top was a notice from my landlord. I squinted, reading the bold stamp across the front. "Heating account balance paid in full in cash." I looked back at Hunter. He followed my gaze, a faint blush creeping up his neck. "You paid my heating bill," I accused softly. "And you shoveled my walkway every morning this month." I saw the boot prints, Hunter. They were size 13. He ducked his head, looking almost sheepish. "I wasn't breaking the rules. Technically, I was maintaining distance. I needed to know you were warm." A quiet, breathless laugh escaped my chest. All the walls I had built, all the cynical, lazy excuses I had used to keep myself from trying, completely crumbled to dust. I didn't need a bulletproof vest. I just needed him. I reached up, my fingers brushing against the collar of his completely botched flannel shirt. I slowly unbuttoned the mismatched holes, my knuckles grazing the warm skin of his chest, before buttoning them back up correctly. Hunter held his breath, his eyes tracking every movement of my hands. "You look ridiculous in mismatched shoes," I whispered, sliding my hand up to cup the back of his neck, tangling my fingers in his messy hair. I was in a rush, he breathed out, leaning into my touch. I know, I said, a soft smile breaking across my face for the first time in a month. I pulled him down until our lips were barely a breath apart. "You don't have to leave, Hunter. The test is over." He didn't need to be told twice. He closed the distance, capturing my lips in a kiss that tasted like relief, desperation, and 27 days of agonizing wait. The boundary line was completely, utterly erased under the snow, and for the first time in a long time, I actually wanted to try. Spring arrived in our East Coast college town with a slow, reluctant thaw, melting the mountains of snow into muddy puddles, and finally giving my terrible apartment radiator a much-needed break. The morning sun was streaming aggressively through the cheap, cracked blinds of my bedroom window, painting bright yellow stripes across the floorboards. I was face down in the pillows, trapped in a highly complex, multi-layered sandwich of body heat. At my feet, Nacho the cat was curled into a heavy, unmoving 12-pound orange boulder, and plastered against my back, wrapping me in a suffocatingly secure hold, was Hunter. His massive arm was hooked tightly around my waist, pulling me flush against his chest. His face was buried in the crook of my neck, his deep, rhythmic breathing tickling my skin. It had been 3 months since the blizzard. 3 months since my supposedly straight basketball star best friend had practically kicked my door off its hinges, destroyed my bulletproof vest, and officially moved his life into my tiny rundown apartment. Technically, he still had a dorm room on campus. Practically, I hadn't seen him spend a single night there since February. The red metal toolbox had found a permanent home under my sink. His massive collection of hoodies was currently taking over my closet. I groaned, trying to shift my weight to escape a stray beam of sunlight hitting my eye, but Hunter immediately tightened his grip, letting out a low, sleepy rumble of protest. "Don't move," he mumbled against my skin, his voice gravelly with sleep. "It's Saturday. The sun is an illusion. Go back to sleep. You're crushing my ribs, you giant." I grumbled, though I didn't actually try to push him away, and Nacho is cutting off the circulation to my feet. Good Hunter murmured, pressing a lazy, open-mouthed kiss to the back of my shoulder. That means you can't run away. You're stuck here with us. I let out a soft huff of laughter, closing my eyes and letting myself sink back into the warmth of the mattress. Things had changed drastically over the last few months. When Hunter and I finally walked back onto campus together, fingers intertwined, the reaction was nothing short of explosive. The guy who had loudly declared himself straight in the middle of the quad was now publicly unapologetically carrying my backpack and pressing kisses to my temple outside the library. The basketball team had been stunned for exactly 5 minutes before Clayton the captain clapped Hunter on the back and demanded he pay up for losing a bet they apparently had going. Even Chase had caught us at the local diner one night. Instead of getting defensive, Hunter had simply wrapped an arm around my waist, and Chase had just smirked, raising his coffee mug in a silent, respectful toast before leaving us alone. But the biggest change wasn't the public reaction, it was the quiet shift inside my own head. I hadn't magically transformed into a highly ambitious overachiever. I still hated mornings. I still avoided unnecessary club meetings, and I still fully believed that doing nothing was a valid weekend activity. But my laziness was no longer a defense mechanism. I wasn't using apathy as a shield to keep people from expecting things from me. I wasn't hiding from the world anymore, I was just comfortably navigating it at my own pace. And the best part? Hunter didn't care. Love doesn't require you to completely rewrite your personality into some flawless, hard-working protagonist. Sometimes the absolute best thing you can find in life is someone who is utterly thrilled to pamper your worst habits. Hunter had endless reserves of energy, and he spent a ridiculous amount of it making sure I was comfortable. He cooked, he dragged me out of bed when I actually needed to go to class, and he fought with Nacho daily for the right to sleep closest to me. All right, that's it. Hunter suddenly announced, his voice losing its sleepy edge. He rolled over, pulling the heavy blankets entirely off my body. The cool morning air hit my skin, and I shrieked, scrambling to grab the sheets. Hunter, I swear I yelled. It's 10 in the morning, babe, he said, standing up and stretching. His t-shirt rode up, showcasing the ridiculous carved abs that I was finally allowed to stare at without feeling guilty. We're getting up. The deli down the street has those bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches you like. The greasy ones. I paused halfway through, pulling the pillow over my head. My stomach let out a traitorous rumble. I'll buy the sandwiches, Hunter coaxed, leaning over the bed and flashing me that cocky, brilliant grin that still made my heart skip a beat. But you have to put on pants and walk there with me. Can't you just go get them and bring them back to bed? I bargained, giving him my best pathetic look. Nacho let out a meow of agreement. No, Hunter laughed, reaching down and effortlessly hooking his hands under my arms. Before I could protest, he hoisted me out of the bed and onto my feet. You need vitamin D, and I need to hold your hand in public so everyone remembers you're mine. You're a clingy, possessive menace, I complained, fully leaning my weight against him so he had to support me. And you love it, he countered, wrapping his arms around me and pulling me into a tight, lifting hug. He was entirely too smug. I tilted my head and without hesitation bit down firmly on his shoulder through the thin cotton of his t-shirt. He yelped loudly, though he immediately burst into a loud, echoing laugh, stumbling back and carrying me with him. Are you a cat or a person, Jesus Jesse? Keep complaining, and I'll make you carry me to the deli, I threatened, finally pulling back to look at him. Hunter's eyes were crinkled at the corners, bright and filled with an overwhelming, undeniable amount of affection. He reached up, cupping my jaw, his thumb brushing over my cheekbone, just like he had on that freezing, rainy night months ago. I'd carry you anywhere, he whispered, leaning in to press a soft, lingering kiss against my lips. I kissed him back, smiling against his mouth. The tiny apartment was a mess. Nacho was currently screaming for breakfast. Hunter's shoes were still probably mismatched somewhere in the hallway. But as I wrapped my arms around the boy who had stubbornly kicked down all my walls, I knew I didn't need to run away ever again. My safe zone wasn't an empty room anymore. It was right here, perfectly chaotic, and exactly where I belonged.